Good morning! Hello, everybody. This is Rich Szerman. You're listening to KHTS, AM 1220, FM 98.1. And today on the Real Estate Fix with Rich, the show, we're going to be talking about all sorts of good stuff. Mostly, we're going to be covering reverse mortgages and kind of how to deal with a reverse mortgage when a loved one passes away. I have a special guest in studio today, Liz Moore. We're going to talk about her case and what's going on with that. We're going to kind of walk you guys through that as a sort of exemplar of how to handle these things, because reverse mortgages are extraordinarily dangerous, and if you're not careful, you will get in trouble and you will lose a lot of money and you may even lose the house. And there are very specific rules that if you follow, you can make the banks do what you want them to do to a point. What if you don't follow, you will get run under. And we're going to go through all that good stuff. But first, as always, we're going to start with a market wrap, let you guys know what's going on. It's been an interesting week in real estate because the MLS has given us more data. So August, we just got the August numbers in. And they're interesting, and I want to go over them with you guys, as we always do. So the August numbers for Santa Clarita is contrasted with the July numbers. It's pretty interesting stuff. It's market trends that we kind of saw coming. It's stuff we've been talking about. No huge surprises, but it is interesting. So let's talk about it. The median sales price in Santa Clarita as of the end of August is now $815,000. That is up $19,000 versus July, which was $796,000. Now, there have also been a few fewer sales. That's affected that. There have been a couple of big sales. That number seems, I don't want to say artificially because it's completely accurate, but it is a little higher than it ordinarily would otherwise be. So up $19,000, which is not a lot, but a little. The single-family median home price for a single-family home is now $900,000, contrasted with last month's $865,000, and that's up $45,000 on average. But again, there've been a couple of big sales in San Canyon and one other in Newhall, and that has kind of pushed some of the averages out of whack a little bit. So I think that 900,000 number is a little bit it's accurate, but it's a little bit misleading as far as a normal market. And then in the world of condos and townhomes, last month in July, the average was 531. This month, it's 540,000. We're up $9,000. And I don't think that's too much of an aberration. I think that the being down 114,000 in July was probably the aberration. The market is starting to head down a little bit. The housing market is starting to soften a little bit as far as prices, but prices aren't dropping or anything. There's no tumbling going on. It's just taking longer to sell houses. And as I've been telling you guys for the last couple of months, last 3 or 4 months, really the market we're in is if you're looking to sell a house, unlike 6 months ago when you could just put it on the market and you'd have 14 buyers, right now you got to be a deal. And we're going to go over all that before I end the segment, but you'll understand why when we get there. Let's talk about new listings. We are 341 new listings in Santa Clarita in the month of August. That's down 11 from 352 in July. We have 620 active listings. Those are properties currently on the market. It's down 16 listings from an active number of 636 in July. We have 175 pending sales. And this is the big number because in July we had 201. So we're down 26 pending sales, which is just what I've been telling you. Fewer things are getting sold right now. We're starting to see volumes decrease a little bit. And we're going to talk about why in just a second. But first, before I get into the whys of the market and why this is happening, I want to go over the San Fernando Valley numbers because they are illuminating, to put it mildly. You'll see what I mean when I get there. Let's go over the basics. So, okay, in the San Fernando Valley in the month of August, the median sales price overall is $950,000, and that's down $25,000 from the average in July of 2024. The single-family home median sales price for a single-family home is $1,070,000. That's down $70,000 from the month in July. The median sales price for condos and townhomes in the San Fernando Valley, $605,000, and that's down $55,000 since July. So let's recoup that. We'll go over this again real quick. On average, the sales prices in the San Fernando Valley are down $25,000. Single-family homes are down $70,000. Again, these are the averages. When you consider all the single-family homes and all the condos, these are just the averages. And the condo numbers are down $55,000. Now, those are pretty big jumps in 1 month. And I think that's indicative of where the market is going. But here's the really big number. We're going to get to this. New listings, 1,118 new listings in the San Fernando Valley. That's down 100, nearly 10% from July of last year. Excuse me, July of this year, month before. The active listings, 2,118. That's down 69 listings from the month of July. And here's the big one, the number of pending sales. In July in the San Fernando Valley, there were 601 pending sales. Those are houses that have gone into escrow but have not yet closed escrow. In the month of August, it's 490. That's 111 fewer sales, roughly 20%. That is a big, big drop to see in 1 month. And the number of closed sales is 740. That's also down. Now, let's talk about why that is, because I think that's the important part. The numbers are interesting, but they're only interesting if you can do something with them. So here is what's going on. If you are a buyer right now, and I'll tell you this is true of most buyers, if you're a buyer right now, you're looking at a market that we're seeing more and more inventory come on the market every day. Now, if you're in a situation where, like where you live, there's usually about 5 to 10 houses on the market as an average, let's say 10 to make the math easy. For the last several years, there's been 1 or 2, maybe 3, and that's been it when your average is 10 homes on the market. Now that number's up to about 6. Still not anywhere near normalcy, still not anywhere near the 10 on the market that it should be, to use my example, but it's still a lot higher than it was in, say, April of this year. So what we're seeing, if you're a buyer, is more and more inventory coming to the market every day. And a lot of those houses are not selling. They're certainly not selling as quickly as they were. So you've got a situation where if you're a buyer, every day that goes by, you have more choices than you had the day before. Also, and this is the big one, it's the interest rate. The interest rate controls the market. We've talked about it many times before. Those of you guys who follow it or follow the show or listen to me or talk to me about this sort of stuff. I tell you this all the time. The interest rate dictates the market. There are a lot of things that affect the real estate market, but the interest rate is the single largest motivator. It is the single largest data point in the entire real estate market, residential real estate, commercial as well, but certainly in residential. Right now, according to our good friends at Bankrate, as of yesterday, I pulled the numbers yesterday, the 30-year loan right now on average in the United States is 6.43%. That's the lowest it's been in the last 22 months. Last week's rate was 6.43. It is unchanged. It's been stable for the last 2 weeks. The 15-year is down to 5.78, down 0.05%, which is 5.83 the week before. So it's come down a little bit. But just a rule of thumb, 15-year versus 30-year, depends on your situation. You do what best fits your situation. But in general, you want to pay attention because with a 15-year mortgage, unless it is at least 2 points below the 30-year fixed, it's usually not something you want to get into. It just depends on what you're dictating. Because you can use a 30-year fixed and still prepay it earlier. There's also stuff you can use in an amortization schedule. But anyway, the point is the interest rates have dropped, but they've not dropped nearly enough. And this is the kicker. The interest rate we know is going to come down again. There's a data set that's coming out on the 11th of September, and that's going to tell us that we're going to be in our, it'll be our 6th consecutive month to see interest rate reductions because of it. So what happens when the new report comes out on the 11th, there's information that's going to show a 5th drop. Will underline the importance of cutting interest rates again. The Fed's next meeting is September 18th. And all of the pundits, I mean all of them, and I've never seen this before, all of the pundits are forecasting interest rate reductions between 1/4 point to 1/2 point on the 18th. Now, the Fed doesn't directly control the interest rate. We've talked about this before, but they have a huge influence on it. Now, right now, we're averaging around 6.5. What I think is going to happen is the Fed is going to get more, well, I would say good numbers, because they're good numbers for inflation, they're good numbers for the interest rate, on the 11th, and that is going to translate into the Fed dropping the interest rate again on the 18th. And it'll be the first time the Fed has actually dropped the rate rather than the market doing it themselves in 22 months, I think. So it's going to happen. And when it happens, we're going to see about another 1/4 to 1/2 point. So factor this in. If you're a buyer right now, again, every day that goes by, more inventory is returning to the market. You got more options and prices are softening as a result. Add to that, you know for as certain as you can be that the interest rate is going to come down more in the month of September. Now, whether it comes down 1/4 point or 1/2 point, I think 1/2 point is probably optimistic. I don't think it's going to reach 6%, but it's going to come down a little bit when the Fed releases the rate. So you know the interest rate is going to drop in the next couple of weeks. You know there are more houses on the market. You're probably going to wait. I would if I wasn't in a hurry, if I didn't have to get going. And unfortunately, what that means is houses are going to be on the market longer, more inventory is going to keep coming up, and we're going to go from it's been really a seller's market for the last really 5 or 6 years. All through the pandemic and since even before that, it has very much been a seller's market. The seller could kind of call the tune. If you were reasonable, you'd get your price. You'd get whatever you needed. Whereas now, that has changed. So if I was going to put a number on it, I would say up until recently, it's been 90% seller, 10% buyer as far as negotiating power. Now, and I started saying this a couple weeks ago, it's about 65-45. That's a huge jump in buyers' power and buyers' bargaining power, and it's going up. I don't know if we're going to reach parity by the end of the year. I don't think it's going to get to 50-50. It might. It might even go to a buyer's market entirely. We might see buyers come into the market and have even more power because there's so much stuff that's on the market and interest rates are lower and prices start to fall. So, and don't get me wrong, I don't think that we're going to careen out of control. This isn't 2008 and 2009. Prices aren't going to drop like that. It's nothing like that. There's no major crisis. This is just a market correction that is a long time coming. So if you have a house to sell now, this is not very good news. If you have a house to buy, this is very, very good news. So sellers not so great, buyers very, very good. The bottom line is the market is slowly moving from a seller's market, which has been the market for the last several years, and it's moving to a buyer's market. That's what's happening. But buyers are also waiting to see what happens with the interest rate and the Fed's next meeting on September 18th. So what I think is going to happen is I think after that meeting, the interest rate will go down a little bit, if not a lot, and I think you're going to see buyers come into the market. I think we're going to have a very strong fourth quarter as far as buyers are concerned. I don't know if we're going to have a very strong market as far as volume is concerned. So the bottom line for all of this, if you're a buyer, not a bad idea to wait a little longer. Don't wait a lot. Be out there, be looking, get your head on a swivel, as they say, and start looking around, know what you're looking for, and, get yourself ready, get yourself pre-qualified, get in the game, as it were, get all your ducks in a row so you are ready to strike when the interest rate drops. And if you're a seller, your house better be a deal, because right now, if your house isn't a deal, it ain't going to sell. It's just that simple. Now, it doesn't have to be a deal because of price, although most things are price. Maybe it's a deal because it's the only one in the neighborhood with a remodeled kitchen. Maybe it's the only one in the neighborhood with a view, or the only one with the best location, or some other marquee thing. But you got to have that marquee thing. You got to be a deal, because if you're not going to sell. That's just the reality. And we're gonna start seeing houses that would have sold in a month are now going to take 3 or 4 months to sell. It's just going to take longer, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Bringing some normalcy back to the market is not necessarily a bad thing. So there's your market wrap. Ultimately, the upshot of all of this. Inventory is starting to return. Buyers have more options. Sellers have more competition. The interest rate has already fallen, and it's going to fall some more after the Fed's meeting on the 18th. And that's where we're going to be at for a little while. I do not think we're going to get under 6% by the end of the year. We were just talking about that at the station. I think we're going to probably get around 6%. My hope is that we get there by the end of the first quarter of next year. But certainly next year we're going to get under 6%. As I said, I hope it's in the first quarter. We really, in my opinion, and it's not just my opinion, a lot of people share this, we need to get down to 5.5%. 5.5% is where we reach a healthy market. We reach parity. Buyers can start to afford houses again. We can get some affordability back in the market. We'll get some more movement in the market. It'll help stabilize prices. 5.5 is the magic number. And I think we're going to hit 5.5 before the end of 2025. I just don't know when. But, keep your radio station tuned to 12 AM 1220 or FM 98.1, and we'll tell you. Just come in on Fridays at 10 o'clock, and we'll tell you. If you need to know something more ahead of that, give me a call. You can always reach me. I give up my personal cell phone number on the air all the time. That number is 661-714-1400. Again, that's 661-714-1400. That is my cell phone number. That is my personal cell phone number, 714-1400. You can call me at that number anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If I don't answer, please text, and I will call you back. Please do not call me Fridays between 10 and 11 because I have something else going on. I'm mostly talking to my mother. Those of you who know the show, she has a bad habit of calling with something incredibly important while I'm on air. She just does that. Hi, Mom. I love you. Always nice to hear from you, but maybe not on Fridays. At least not before 11 a.m. Anyway, so that's kind of the market. That's where we're at. Now, before I go to break, I want you guys to stay tuned, please, because we have a special guest coming in. Liz Moore is joining us. She's a client, and we're going to talk about her situation, what she's gone through with her grandmother's reverse mortgage and her grandmother's house, and kind of what we're doing and how we got it all sorted out. And I think this is a good thing for you guys to learn because there are a lot of reverse mortgages out there. It's become a very popular financial instrument. I'm not against them 100%. They just tend to be really expensive, and they tend to get really abused. There's a lot of opportunity for abuse in a reverse mortgage by the banks. And it has been my experience, and I'm happy to have this argument with anyone, but nobody ever seems to disagree with when I say this. When it comes to the world of banking, whatever makes money will happen. However unethical, however immoral, potentially however illegal, it's what will happen. In other words, if you give the banks an inch, they will take a mile. That is just the way they function, and that's by design. Don't blame them for that. If you guys have seen the video that's rolling around from YouTube, that ridiculous woman, I think it was in New Jersey, who decided to jump in the tiger cage and then stuck her hand through the gate and luckily didn't get it ripped off because the tiger thought she was a toy. You stick your hand in the tiger's gate and the tiger's pen, you're going to lose a finger. You may lose the whole hand. And that is not the tiger's fault. That's your fault. It's kind of the same thing with the banks. The banks will take advantage. Understand, they are not honest arbitrators. They're just not. And if they get the opportunity to take advantage, they will. Just like the tiger would have eaten that lady's hand, probably her head as well, had she stayed there any longer. That's what banks do. Just know who you're dealing with. Not saying it's right. I don't agree with it. I think it's unethical. I think it's immoral. I think it's wrong. but just understand what you're dealing with. And reverse mortgages, that's particularly bad. So we're going to talk about reverse mortgages. We're going to talk about how you deal with a reverse mortgage when a loved one dies, what steps you need to take, how you can make it work for you, the many, many things that the reverse mortgage company is not going to tell you. And most of these are federal guidelines. So we're going to talk about that as well. So hang in through the break if you would. We'll hear from some of our sponsors. When we come back, we're going to have a special guest. We're going to talk all about reverse mortgages. You've been listening to The Fix with Rich. I'm your host, Rich Szerman, on KHTS, AM 1220, FM 98.1, your hometown station. Hey everybody, welcome back. You're listening to The Real Estate Fix with your host, Rich Szerman. That's me. That's why we call the show The Real Estate Fix with Rich, because I just like the sound of my name, I guess. Anyway, on KHTS, AM 1220, FM 98.1, your hometown station. We have a special guest in studio today. We have Liz Moore. She's a client of mine. Liz has been nice enough to join us today so we can talk about her story and what's going on. Say hi to the people.
Hi, people.
There you go.
Hello.
Thank you for coming in today. So we're going to talk about kind of this situation because I want you guys to hear us, not just from me, because you hear from me all the time. I want you to hear from a client as well as to what goes on with reverse mortgages. Reverse mortgages are, as we talked about before the break, are becoming more and more popular. They're a very popular financial instrument. They're not necessarily a bad thing. For a lot of people, they work out really well. For a lot of people, the difference between staying in the house and having to give up the house. So I'm not against reverse mortgages. However, what I am against is the abuse of reverse mortgages. And the way they're arranged, first of all, you're dealing with a vulnerable population to begin with because you have to be at least 60 to get a reverse mortgage. Most people who get reverse mortgages are in their 70s. So I think it's 62 or 63 if memory serves is the break. I think it's 63 officially, but you can kind of goose it down to 62. Anyway, you're already dealing with a vulnerable population by definition. And as we talked about before the break, a bank is going to be a bank. If you're mad at a bank for screwing you over for money, that's what they do. That's what they're designed to do. Now, whether it's ethical and whether it's moral is not the question. The question is it legal? And so we're going to run through how to kind of deal with a reverse mortgage when a loved one passes away. So I'm going to tell this whole story. And this starts with, if you could get those of you guys who follow, if you remember the story of Beverly Fox. Beverly Fox was 90 years old when I met her. She's a 91-year-old woman. We got into her file. She was living in Friendly Valley, and she'd been on the property for, how long was she lived there, Liz?
Since 1989.
Yeah, so she's been there for a good long time, 25 years, 24 years at that point. 35 years. Anyway, I can do math. Anyway, and she called me up initially because they told her she was in foreclosure. Which, and the funny part about this is, it's funny to tell the story, but it's not so funny overall, is she was in foreclosure because her bank, PHH, and those of you who just went, oh, because I used the word PHH, you're right, they decided that Beverly was dead. She was very much alive, and they had just decided she was dead. And one of the things that a reverse mortgage will instantly go into foreclosure over is if the person, if the borrower, the homeowner, passes away. So, just tell me how much of the story I want to get into. So what happened is she called me up because they were foreclosing on her property because they said she was dead. And just so you guys know, a bank can't just do that. There are very, very specific rules that a bank has to go through to decide somebody is dead. Now in this case, because it's PHH, and as you guys know, I loathe PHH. They're a horrible, horrible bank. Those of you who've watched the show or are paying attention to my career, what we do, you know that I've been at war with PHH for years. They're just bad at this. They just are. They're just an awful company. Their bookkeeping is horrible. Their training of employees is horrible. The way they treat clients is god-awful. They've been fined over and over again. They've been sanctioned by the CFPB over and over again. And yet they seem to continue to fail upwards. So this is the magic and wonder of PHH. So what PHH did is they decided, because they took over the mortgage and they sent Beverly a letter in the mail, which she just looked at when I don't do business with PHH. She didn't even know it was her bank. She didn't send it back saying she was alive. So they decided she was dead. Now, you can't just do that. There are rules. She had what's called a HECM loan, which stands for Home Equity Conversion Loan. And those are the most common type of reverse mortgage. They're the ones that are federally insured. They're the ones that you see pitched on TV because when they say they're federally insured, they're talking about HECMs. And under the HECM guidelines from HUD, you have to go to the property before you can decide somebody is dead. Unless you get a death certificate, you have to go and knock on the door and you have to look and say, and they didn't do any of that. What we did is we insisted on a copy of the reports that they used to determine she was dead. And what they did is they sent somebody, and because she's in Friendly Valley, they got as far as the guard shack, and I don't know, I guess they yelled from the guard shack, and her property's a mile away and she couldn't hear them, so that's the end of that. All they did was go to the guard shack, and from going to the guard shack, they determined she was dead. Now, as funny as that is, and as dumb as it is, because she was obviously alive, here's where it gets to be an issue. They put the house in foreclosure, and they immediately charge foreclosure fees. So, to make a very long story short, we contacted PHH. We demanded they provide us with the information that led them to believe that Beverly is dead. They're required to knock on the front door, which they did not do, and they have to check for activity, which they did not do. And they're supposed to send multiple notices, which they also did not do. And PHH has a long and storied history of not sending notices. As a matter of fact, how many notices have you gotten since you took over the property, since you passed away?
Probably just one.
And that's in 9 months. They've sent one notice,
Yes.
but yet put it back in foreclosure.
Yes, and it was after that was the notice that they were putting it back
Foreclosure.
into. Yeah, nothing prior.
Yeah, and just so you guys know, the rule is now Liz took over the house from her grandmother. She's her next of kin, and there's a trust, which Charles is going to talk about a little bit. So Liz took over the house and contacted PHH and said, "Hey, I've taken over the house. Here's a copy of the trust. Here's everything." They have a responsibility, legal responsibility, to begin communicating with Liz, which they have not done. To this day, they still haven't. PHH is very happy to put things in foreclosure because they run a scam. This is how the scam works. And it's not just PHH, they all do that. What they do is the minute they put it in foreclosure, because they've decided, and no, not because you didn't make a payment, it's a reverse mortgage, not because they just decided, what they do is they immediately run up anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 in foreclosure fees. And this is the way the scam works. They run up that bill, whether your loved one is dead or whether in this case they're still alive, they run up the bill, and then they reverse the foreclosure. In other words, they take it out of foreclosure, but they don't reverse the fees. And if you're dealing with the death of a loved one, you're dealing with all of that and all of that fallout, and all you know is that grandma had a reverse mortgage, you don't necessarily know if there was an extra $10,000 slotted into that mortgage. You have no way of knowing, because no one's going to do an audit of a reverse mortgage right after one of their loved ones dies. So they add anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 each and every time. You don't pay your taxes, they add this money to the bill. If they think you're dead and you're not, they add this money to the bill. And on it goes. So you have to watch them very carefully because they are attempting to rip you off. That's just what they're doing. I have no nicer way of saying that. This is theft. They are attempting to rip you off. And PHH is sort of the king of this. They're not alone, but they are sort of the king of this sort of thing. So anyway, that's kind of the background. And now you guys have heard that. I want you guys to hear from Liz. So when did we first meet? Do you remember?
Actually, I do remember. We met when I called you, cursing your name and wondering.
Well, you weren't the first.
Wondering who you were, because when I went to my grandmother's house and saw that actual red tape taped on her door, and we had discussions about that. Mm-hmm. And she decided she was going to, figure it out herself. And she had loads and loads of all these, just mail, this person, that person, I can help you. So I was a bit skeptical. That's how we met.
Let me interject for a second. Whenever you get into foreclosure, you get all kinds of notices from people offering to help, and it's usually offering to help with a fee. I'll help you get it. And really what they are, and I don't want to put everybody in this bucket, but the majority of them are con artists. They're looking to benefit on other people's misery. That's what they're looking to do. They are not honest arbiters. They're just not. And if you've got PHH to begin with, and then you wind up with one of these guys, it'll bury. You'll wind up losing the house. And I've seen it over and over and over again. One of the reasons that we do foreclosure defense for free, one of the reasons I do foreclosure defense for free and have for the last 30 years, is to make clear to everybody that what my goals are. We separate any financial gain from the client's file. That way the client knows that they can trust what we're doing. And it's just a pay-it-forward business model. What we do is we jump in there, we do it for free, and then we hope that you come back and let us represent you when it comes time to sell a house, which is what's happening here. So you get a lot of bad actors who come out of the woodwork all offering to help, and they're not offering help. What they're offering is a scam. And given that you're already being scammed by a reverse mortgage in this case to begin with, I think it's the last thing you need. So yeah, you're not the first person to think that my office and I was a scam as well, because everybody who runs around at this, and then they hear that you do it for free, they go, okay, sure, how?
Yes.
I'm happy to explain. So we met when before Beverly had passed away, and so let's jump ahead a little bit so you guys kind of know a little of the background. So we got in. If you see, there's a good story that the station did. 91-year-old woman about to be evicted from her home was done last year, I think, right around Christmas, or maybe it was a little before. It was in 2023, and we used the story that the station was good enough to do on it, and we used the show and everything else that we do, and we got PHH to reverse the fees. So those fees were taken off. She was taken out of foreclosure, and she was put back on an even keel, and everything was good. And then, unfortunately, in early January of this year, Beverly passed away. And we were all diminished by that because she's an extraordinary person and a lot of fun to hang out with. I could tell stories for days, and we have, about even the short time I knew Beverly. She's just an amazing person. and she is missed. But she passed away. So now we're in a situation where she's no longer with us, and the reverse mortgage is now in foreclosure legitimately because she's no longer with us. And what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to reach out to see if there is a next of kin. Now, in your case, and I want to touch on this because a lot of you guys don't know this. This is incredibly important. This is something that Beverly and Liz did right, which most people do wrong. You guys had a trust. Beverly had a living trust, and she'd gone through the trust, and she had named you as the trustee, as the executor, and so she was ready. Now, no one likes to think about death and think about what's going to happen after they die, obviously, but God bless Beverly, she did this right. So what she did, because she had a trust in place, you didn't have to go through probate. And that's incredibly important because probate in California can take up to a year, sometimes longer. And most people don't start probate the minute one of their loved ones dies. Now, why that's incredibly important is because here are the rules. These are the HUD guidelines for HECM reverse mortgages. When somebody passes away, within 30 days, you are supposed to contact the bank. Now, I know you did that and they just decided to ignore it, but that's an issue with PHH. But you're supposed to do that within 30 days, and then you have 6 months from the date of death. You have 6 months to either buy the reverse mortgage, pay it off, sell the house, pay it off, or do whatever you're going to do. You got 6 months. That's it. Well, if probate in California takes a year, your 6 months isn't going to do a whole lot of good. It'll get you halfway there. Now, because of that, HUD also has a rule that says, and we're going to talk about this because we're in the middle of this right now, that at the end of 6 months, if you go to the mortgage company, you say, look, I need another 3 months. I need another 90 days. They have to give it to you. It is not up to them. They have to give it to you. It is a HUD guideline. It is a federal rule. It's a law. They have to give it to you. And at the end of that 90 days, so now you're 9 months in, you can ask for another 90-day extension. And again, they have to give it to you. And that's the period we're in right now because it's been a little over 9 months, and they have once again slated the property for foreclosure. And I definitely want to touch on this because even though you guys did everything right, we're still looking down the barrel of a foreclosure again at the end of this month. And PHH, in their infinite wisdom, has decided they will not even consider granting an extension until we are within 21 days of the current foreclosure sale date. We've been asking for the last roughly 60 days because we knew we were going to need the time. And they won't even consider granting it until you're this close to the foreclosure. So what they're doing is to use my favorite example, is they're taking a gun, they're putting a bullet in the chamber, they're holding it to your head, they're cocking the trigger, and they're saying, it's okay, just ask us before we pull the trigger and we won't kill you. That's basically where they're at with it. Now, I would say everything leading up to that is also a crime, as it is if it's a gun, but if they do it with a foreclosure, it's perfectly legal. So that is complete and utter nonsense. We'll get it taken care of. That's what we're dealing with now.
No one should put baby in a corner.
Yeah, that is what we're absolutely doing now. So that's kind of the rules regarding reverse mortgages, and that's how you deal with it. Now, most people do not contact the bank within the first 30 days because they're still dealing with the death of a loved one. It takes more than 30 days to get over for most people, or even to kind of find your footing in that circumstance. Most people take about 90 to 120 days, 3 to 4 months before they contact the bank. And so what does the bank do in that time? They put the property in foreclosure. They roll up $3,000 to $10,000 worth of foreclosure fees, and here we are. So right now, with PHH, we have two fights going on. We are, one, fighting them to remove foreclosure fees that should not be there. And two, we're fighting to get another extension so we get the property sold. And that's kind of where we're at with that property right now. So when you guys put together a trust, whose idea was it? Was it Beverly's idea to do it?
You know what, it was. And she actually put that together after my mother passed away.
Oh. So she had been through trying to deal with probate issues and stuff like that prior.
Yes,
That's what got her there. See, I didn't know that.
Yes.
So, but the point here is setting up a trust is not hard. You can go online and do it for a couple $100. You can get some very good attorneys if you need. I can recommend to you. But put it in a trust. Do some estate planning. Even if you're in your 30s, it doesn't matter. If you own a property, do some estate planning. You can always change it, but get it done because probate in California is ugly and time-consuming and expensive. To hire a decent probate attorney, you're going to spend, well, it's fixed by law. Depends on the amount of the probate that is in question as to how much you're going to charge, but it's expensive. You're looking at probably, depending on the size of the estate, $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 to go through probate, all of which can be avoided by a couple of pieces of paper that say, here, this is what I want to do. You leave a trust. You leave a will. Trust is, I think, better, but you leave a will. So that way you don't have to, well, I guess with the rule you still have to go to probate, so trust you avoid it. But we can have a probate attorney on and talk about this later. But anyway, doing that is absolutely key. Absolutely key. So luckily you guys did that. So even having done it right, we've contacted the bank, we've gotten the extension, we got the trust paperwork to them, which is a whole other thing. So they didn't want to accept it at first because we're denying it, which is insane. But we got that all sorted out. And so now what we're at, well, I'd like to tell you, what's the latest the PHH has told you about keeping the property?
So when I spoke to PHH earlier, I think it was Monday, they told me that whatever was happening was out of their hands and that it was up to the HUD, and they gave me their phone number and I called them. So, I've just been phone call after phone call on hold for hours.
Because you have nothing better to do with your time.
Yes, exactly. And, when I spoke to the woman in the HUD department, she's like, why did they ask you to call me? They're the lender. It's a secured mortgage. They're the ones who are responsible. So actually the woman that I got on the phone was nice enough to actually help me take her time out of her day to guide me and give me some advice.
Yeah, and for those of you listening, please hear what Liz is saying here. The people at HUD are terrific. They really are. They're doing a thankless task. They're not very well paid for doing it. They do it all day, every day. And my experience with them, you get the occasional bad apple. My experience with them is the same as yours. They're terrific. But in this case, all PHH did was slough you off onto HUD to get you off the phone.
Yep.
Because all HUD did is what they did is said, I don't know why we're talking to you. I can tell you the guidelines, but they're the guidelines. PHH has to follow. It's not up for debate. PHH has to follow these things.
Yes.
It's interesting. Banks like PHH, and again, this is the scam with reverse mortgages. Banks like PHH and others, they use the rules they like. They ignore the ones they don't. And that's not the way laws work. That's not the way rules work. But according to PHH, it is. PHH is also the company, if you guys remember, who famously, when I was telling them about something, a law in the state of California, something like the California Home Rule Bill of Rights, and I was quoting it to them, they said, we don't have that here. And I'm quite sure they do because it's the law in California. But they explained to me that because they were processing this loan out of a processing center in Texas, that it didn't apply to them. And I had to explain to them, well, first after having to ask them, please talk to the legal department, we had to explain to them that, yeah, it does. The law still applies to you. It's a law in California. That's where the property is. That's where the loan was done. The law applies to you.
Maybe it's Texas Mars and not Texas Earth.
Yeah, maybe. They could be on a different planet. It wouldn't surprise me. There's some of these things they say. But here are the laws we like, so we're gonna follow those. And here are the laws we don't like. We're gonna ignore those. Is not the way this works. Do not let a mortgage lender do that to you. It's just not okay. And obviously, we got on the phone with them and said this is ridiculous, and here's where we're at. So, so it's just a ridiculous set of circumstances. So, with a reverse mortgage, just to give you guys the key points, then we're going to move on to, we're going to go to break. When we come back from break, we'll talk about what we're doing with the property now, because that's really the fun part. With a reverse mortgage, here are the key takeaways. If you have a loved one who has a reverse mortgage, get an accounting before they die. Look at the accounting, because you'll have that handy if something does happen to them. Just do it once a year. Just ask for an accounting. They have to provide it to you. Then when you do have somebody pass away, within 30 days, preferably within 10 days, but certainly within 30 days, send a written communication to the lender. Hey, I am the next of kin. Here's a copy of the will, or here's a copy of the trust, or here's the name of my probate attorney, whatever it is. Here's what I'm doing to get my title to the house in my name so I can secure the property. Do that within 30 days, preferably 10. I know you don't want to. It's a difficult time you're dealing with that death, but this will save you a lot of aggravation and fees. After that, you have 6 months to either pay off the loan, take over the house, refinance, take over the house, or sell the house. That's the time frame. You got 6 months. If it doesn't get done within 6 months, you can ask for 2 3-month extensions. So you will have a year total. And sometimes you can extend beyond that if a probate court's involved and they ask you to extend. So again, got to contact them within 30 days. You get an automatic 6 months, and then you get two 90-day extensions after that. So you have up to a year to get this sorted out. So that's the biggie. Communication is everything. Do not expect them to communicate with you. And I have a quote here that I want to read to you guys if I can find it, that came from HUD themselves. While you face delays or roadblocks due to an issue with the property's title and impending foreclosure, a lack of information from the servicer, you'll have to pay for the home's upkeep, taxes, and insurance. Interest and fees will continue to accrue on the debt while you try to work out any of the above options. Also, heirs have noted that servicers often won't negotiate or communicate during the workout process, as and that's why homes are often foreclosed on in many cases. Is a failure for the bank to communicate with the new homeowner that causes a lot of these foreclosures. And that's HUD telling you that. That's not just me.
Directly from them?
That's directly from HUD, yeah. They're warning people about it. So, all right, so that's the situation. So we have this under control now, which is good. We're arguing with them because they're trying to scare you by having a foreclosure date on calendar in the next couple of weeks, and that's fine. We'll get that sorted out as well. And if that doesn't go well, just so you guys listening know, we maintain really good relationships with hard money lenders and private lenders and people who have some money. So in your case, if for some reason we can't get them to back out of that, we can always set up an emergency loan to pay the house off, gets it out of foreclosure, and now we can get back to selling it. So that is an option for you as well, and it's an option we maintain for all of our clients who come through this sort of thing, depending on the amount. So I tell you what, I'm getting the high sign. We need to go to a break. Here's from some of the our sponsors, so let's do that. You're listening to The Fix with Rich. I'm your host, Rich Szerman, on KHTS, AM 1220, FM 98.1, your hometown station. Please listen to the break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how we get to the other side of this rainbow and how we actually get the rest of the property sorted out, fixed, and sold. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. You're listening to The Fix with Rich, your real estate guy, and what they call me an expert. I'll take that. On KHTS, AM 1220, FM 98.1, FM, your hometown station. We're sitting here with Liz Moore. We're talking about reverse mortgages. We were going through her grandmother's case and kind of what we did there to get her out of foreclosure to begin with, and then unfortunately she passed away, and what we're dealing with now. And before we get into kind of what we're doing with the property now, I want to mention one other thing we talked about during the break. Liz was nice enough to bring it to my attention. I really need to mention to you guys. Trusts are not recorded. So when you get a trust, like a family trust or a living trust or whatever it is, they are not recorded. There's no Department of Trusts. The county assessor's office doesn't keep them. You have to have them. So if you do not have a copy of the trust and your loved one dies, and the attorney who prepared it will have kept a copy, and they're no longer with us or they're no longer practicing or whatever, you are in big, big trouble, because without that trust to present, you're back in probate. And you're back in probate saying, I am in, hopefully there are no other heirs you have to fight with or anything else. So if you do set up a trust, please, for the love of God, make multiple copies of it. A good place to keep one is in a safety deposit box at a bank. I have, in my particular situation, we have 4 copies of it. One is held by a very, very close friend. One is held by our attorney. And I have one in a safety deposit box and the one at the house. So that way, no matter what happens, if something happens to my wife and I, my daughter has access to the trust and she doesn't have to go through probate. So yeah, very, very important. Do a trust, that's number one. Make multiple copies and keep them handy. Digital copies are great, that's fine. The cloud is wonderful, definitely do that. But keep at least 4 hard copies. One with your attorney, one with you, one with a friend, and one in a secure, 4th location. I think safety deposit boxes and banks work really well. So very, very important. Okay, so that's talking about reverse mortgages. That's how we got here. That's what we're doing to deal with it. Let's talk about what we do next. This is the part I like the most, because this is the sunshine part. This is how we get dug out of this. This is the fun part. So, God bless your grandmother. Wonderful woman.
Thank you.
Bit of a pack rat.
She is.
Tiny bit.
Yes.
She'd been there for a very long time. And all the time I was working with her, I never got really past the entrance to the house. It's only about 900 square feet, little 2-bedroom, because there was really no getting past the entrance to the house, because it was, I wouldn't say she was a hoarder, but was 91 years on this planet. She collected some stuff.
All of her memories.
Yeah. So I'm not saying it was untoward or anything like that. I'm just saying there was a lot.
Yes.
And you know that better than anybody, because you've been cleaning it out for the last several months. And this is also very common. When this happens and you're in a position where you're taking over the property from a loved one, and you got to deal with it. You can't just clean it out. It's going to take a long time, because, like in your case, you found that she used to be called Bunny, which I just can't get enough of. I just love that.
She never told any of us that.
Oh,
yes.
I love that so much. Just the best.
And now that I'm finding like little bunny Easter tchotchkes and little figurines, I'm like, it makes sense.
That's why. That's why she. Bunny Fox. How cool a name is that? My God. I may change my name to that just because I think it's cool. Anyway, but my point is, it's not just pick up box, move box out of house, or fill box, move box out of house. You got to go through everything. You got to go through the photo albums. You got to go through all of this and all of that. I mean, you found a playbill from Les Paul and Mary Ford at a hotel in the Ozarks that she was either working at or attended, but she had a signature from Les Paul. It was terribly cool.
Yeah, and it wasn't a fangirl signature. It was like
it
a
was way cool.
personalized.
That's rock and roll. That's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland kind of stuff.
Yeah, and also like his high school yearbook picture with a little personalized note.
Yeah, we have a theory that there's a thing between she and Les Paul, but we'll leave that. Well, that's just us. Anyway, so it takes a good long time to clean these houses out. It just does. So it takes time. Keep that in mind. Now, where we step into this, in addition to the stuff we've always done, is we have something that you guys have heard me talk about many times before called the resale renovation program. That's where we come into the property and we will spend money on a client's property getting it fixed up. Now, we can't help you clean it out, because you have to go through your grandmother's memories. That's all on you, and it's appropriate that it is, you and the rest of your family. But as far as painting it, changing the flooring, and we got a lot. What did we do in there? I know we put up a bunch of money. You put up a bunch of money. We spent. Well, I'll put it this way, guys. Listen to this. The property in its condition, as Liz first got it, was worth around $275, maybe $300. It's a little place in Friendly Valley. on its best day. Now we've put some money into it, a lot of time, a lot of work, mostly Liz's.
Yes.
And now we expect to get around $350 for it. And I think we put somewhere around 15 grand, maybe 20 grand into it because new flooring, new paint, refinished cabinets, replaced some cabinets, did new countertops, new fixtures. I mean, all kinds of stuff. So now it's all dialed in and it's looking really nice.
I love that kitchen sink.
Yeah, it came out really nice. We have, you guys who listen to the show, you know we use Omar Ramirez. He's sponsored the show, friend of the show, and he went into the work and he's got his teeth into it. I go, hey, what if we do this? Like, I got a buddy who's got one of these. He was fantastic about it. So thank you, Omar, if you're listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. He's not quite done yet, so we don't want to think of just quite. There's still a few things he's got to tidy up, but it's fantastic. And he'll be on the market possibly as early as next week, and we'll get $350 for it. So the point here is, we go into the property, we put a couple of bucks together, we put up the majority of the money, happy to do it, and you don't pay the majority of that. You don't pay back. We can give it to 1% just for free. That's all you. Anything over that, you got to pay us back. But up to 1%. So in this case, we had a little about $3 grand that we're able to just put into the property that you don't have to pay back. The estate doesn't have to pay it back. It's just something we do. It's just
wonderful.
A little gift from us, I guess you could say. Because here's the deal, guys. Houses in the best shape sell for the most money the quickest. And especially in a house like Friendly Valley, in a house that's got about 30 years worth of deferred maintenance, it wasn't bad, it wasn't unlivable, but I know you had to redo the air conditioner and the heater, so that's all dialed in and nice and new now.
Yes.
In addition to everything else, some mechanical systems as well. So whoever comes into this house now is going to have a very easy time. It's going to be all set and ready to go. But by spending about 15 grand, you stand to net about an extra 50 to 65,000. 50 to 75,000. So it's certainly worth it when you do the math. It'll also sell faster. Now, as a realtor, the longer it takes me to sell a house, the more money it costs me, the more time I have to hold the inventory. So we want it to sell quick. You obviously want it to sell quickly as well because it's costing you money every month that goes by, hell, every day that goes by.
Yes.
So we want to get it done as quickly as we can. So here's how we do that. We crack open the checkbook. We come up with a list of repairs that we want to use. Of course, it's not up to me. It's up to the seller. We talked about what we're going to do. It's pretty obvious in that case. And we decide who the contractors are going to be. I cut them a check. In this case, you cut them a check as well. And then we go to work. And then a couple of weeks later, depending on the work, sometimes a month, the house is good to go. So now we've gone from a house that was a depressed asset, kind of beat up, not in great shape, to cleaned out, dialed in, lovely, modern, perfect. But Nick's buyer can walk right in, just set up their stuff and good to go. And more importantly than making it convenient for the buyer, you walk out of it with a lot more money. You and the rest of the estate gets a lot more money out of the property. So $15,000 in, about $75,000 out. That's pretty good math.
And I think the convenience for the buyer too, as well. I mean, just being able to walk into a home and just be able to move in and make it your own.
Yeah.
You know, rather than, oh, we got to do this and do that, or we can't do this and that and the other. And
yeah, well, and we talked about at the top of the show, because there's more inventory coming to market, because interest rates are falling, because there's so many buyers on the fence, now we're in a situation where this will be a deal, not necessarily because of the price, but because it is completely new. It is completely dialed in. It's nice to be able to say to somebody that, hey, nobody's prepared a meal on those countertops. Well, I guess we can't say that you have. But if you guys listen, Liz is also a chef, so trust me, she cooked on the countertop.
There's a brand new toilet as well.
Yeah,
Just
there's
saying,
that too.
has not been used.
Well, there we go. So if you're a buyer looking for a place in Friendly Valley, we have a barely used countertop and a brand new toilet to offer on this house. Hopefully there are other things you'd like
Don't
as
worry.
well, but we got that going for
I
us.
use cutting boards.
Well, there we go. But the point is, by spending a little bit of money, you get a lot of money out of it, and that is the idea. So we go in and we do that all the time. We're happy to do that. We can do that for you too. If you have any questions, if you're looking to reverse mortgage, you got any just questions about it or questions about trust, anything else, I can point you. I'm not an attorney, but I can point you in the right direction. Give me a call, please. My phone number again is 661-714-1400. Again, 661-714-1400. You can reach me anytime, 24 hours a day. I like my job a lot, and I like answering these questions. If for some reason I don't answer, you can always leave me a text. I will call you back. I will text you back. I promise. I try to return my calls as quickly as I can. And we'll get you taken care of. I'll get you the answers you need. I know the answers to these questions. I can point you to the right resources. We can get this sorted out just like we did for Beverly to save the house, and you now taking it over so you can get it sold and the estate can make as much as they can. And I want to thank Liz for coming in today. Thank you very much for being my guest. I appreciate that. Thanks for coming in. The radio can be daunting, not for you, but it can be for other people.
And thank you, Rich, for being like just a wonderful person and savior for my family and my grandmother. And
How did I know you were going to say that? I would have gone to you earlier. We're running out of time. Thank you. It's been my pleasure. It's my honor to work for you guys, and it really is. And I love doing this stuff, so I'll help you guys out anytime. So those of you, thank you for listening. I'm your host, Rich Szerman with The Fix with Rich on KHTS, 98.1 FM, AM 1220, your hometown station. Thank you guys for listening this week. I hope you have a great week. Please be good humans.